Hello, my dear students. The poem that we are going to do today is Gieve Patel's On Killing a Tree. Gieve Patel is an Indian poet, playwright, painter, as well as a practicing physician from Mumbai. He belongs to a group of writers who have subscribed themselves to the Green Movement, which is involved in an effort to protect the environment. His poems speak of deep concerns for nature and exposes man's cruelty to it. Some of his notable works are a collection of poems called The Poems, which was published in 1966, followed by How Do You Withstand Body, which came out in 1976, then Mirrored Mirroring, 1991. He has also written 3 plays titled Princess, the other one is Vaska, and Mr. Behram. The poem On Killing a Tree was one of the poems of his poetry collections named Poems, published in 1966. The underlying theme of Gieve Patel's poem On Killing a Tree is man's cruelty to nature. He gives a graphic description of man's violence and impatience towards nature in a voice of sarcasm and irony. Now, if you look at the form of the poetry, the poem is divided into 4 stanzas with no practical rhyme scheme, and the poem is written in free verse. Now, what is a free verse? It is a form of a poetry which does not use any consistent meter, pattern, rhyme, or any musical pattern. The poem tends to follow the rhythm of a natural speech. So this poem of Gieve Patel, we can say the poem is written in a conversational style. Now let us read aloud. On Killing a Tree by Gieve Patel. It takes much time to kill a tree. Not a simple jab of the knife will do it. It has grown, slowly consuming the earth, rising out of it, feeding upon its crust, absorbing years of sunlight, air, water, and out of its leprous hide, sprouting leaves. So, hack and chop, but this alone won't do it. Not so much pain will do it. The bleeding bark will heal, and from close to the ground will rise curled green twigs, miniature boughs, which, if unchecked, will expand again to former size. No, the root is to be pulled out of the anchoring earth. It is to be roped, tied, and pulled out, snapped out, or pulled out entirely, out from the earth cave, and the strength of the tree exposed, the source white and wet, the most sensitive, hidden for years inside the earth. Then the matter of scorching and choking in sun and air, browning, hardening, twisting, withering, and then it is done. Now let us make a brief analysis of the poem. The poem works on several levels. On the literal level, the poem talks about the act of cutting down of trees. Gieve Patel here hints towards rampant deforestation, and through this very visual representation, he wishes to communicate to the readers the dangers of deforestation. He never directly advises the readers to stop cutting down the trees. Instead, he goes on explaining with painstaking details as how a tree should be cut down. In fact, the title on killing a tree, as well as the description of the process of killing a tree as a ceremonial task, is ironical. On another level, the poem is a social critique. It not only puts deforestation in a negative light, but it also exposes the violent nature of human beings, where survival of the fittest is the guiding mantra. Gieve Patel exposes man's violent nature by attributing human qualities to the tree. Gieve Patel's On Killing a Tree is a poem which presents a graphic picture of the total annihilation of a tree. In the poem, the tree symbolizes nature. Modern man, out of his indiscriminate greed and selfishness, roots out nature and its very spirit. Man's greed is not quenched by the mere physical process of killing a tree. Man realizes that it is not easy to kill a tree because it has grown slowly, consuming the earth and absorbing years of sunlight, air, and water. The mere act of hacking and chopping is not sufficient to kill a tree. The poet describes the entire process of killing a tree as a ceremonial task. In order to bring about the total annihilation of the tree is to be completely uprooted and left to dry and wither in the sun. And then the task of killing a tree is finally done. Now let's understand the poem in detail. So we take the first stanza. It takes much time to kill a tree. Not a simple jab of the knife will do it. So what does the poet want to say out here? The poet says that it is not easy to kill a tree with just a simple jab of a knife. A jab of a knife means a sharp blow of a knife. You could easily kill a human being with just a blow of a knife. Okay? But you cannot do that to a tree. A tree would not die with a simple jab of a knife. And what is the reason for its resilience? Why is the tree so resilient, so strong? The reason is given in the next few lines. Because it has grown slowly, consuming the earth, rising out of it, feeding upon its crust, absorbing years of air, sunlight, water. All right, these are the very elements of the earth that has been absorbed by the tree in its growing years, and it has taken a lot of time to grow. And all through these years of its growth, it has absorbed the very elements of nature like sunlight, air, and water. And these are the very things that has made the tree so very strong and so resilient that it doesn't die with a simple jab of a knife. So in the first stanza, the poet talks about the scientific process of photosynthesis and nutrition of trees. The trees, as we study in biology, that the plants, they take in sunlight, air, and water for its nutrition. That is how it nurtures itself. And out of its leprous hide, sprouting leaves. So here, by leprous hide, the poet means the bark of the tree. Actually, hide is the skin of an animal, all right? But here, the bark of the tree is compared to that of a person with leprosy. And why does he do so? Just to relate to the fact that the bark of the tree is very rough, just like the skin of a person suffering with leprosy, right? So out of the leprous hide, the rough skin, the rough bark of the tree, you would find tender leaves sprouting out, growing, all right? So this is the first stanza. So in the first stanza, the poet says that it is not easy to kill a tree. It takes a lot of time. And the reason for it is the tree is very resilient. And why is the tree resilient? Because it has grown feeding on the very elements of nature like sunlight, air and water. Okay, that is the reason behind the resilience of the tree. It doesn't die easily. Now we go on to the second stanza. So in the first stanza, we come to know that it takes a lot of time to kill a tree. The tree doesn't die easily. So what are we to do? Okay, so the poet comes up with a kind of a solution for it. If you want to kill a tree, you cannot kill it with a simple jab of a knife. So what are we to do? So the poet says, so hack and chop. If you cannot kill the tree with a simple jab of a knife, we have to hack it and chop it down into pieces. But this alone won't do it. So this is also not the solution for killing a tree. You cannot kill a tree by the simple jab. Neither can you kill it with hacking it down and chopping it down. It's not going to die. It's so very strong and resilient. Not so much pain will do it. That means it can easily endure that much of pain. The pain of hacking and chopping, it'll easily endure it. The bleeding bark will heal. Now this sentence is a very good example of personification. Here, the poet has given the attribute of a human to the tree. So just as a human would start bleeding on being hacked and chopped, similarly, the tree too has life in it and starts to bleed when hacked and chopped. Here, it will not bleed like the humans do. You will not see the red blood. But the poet here refers to the sap that comes out of the plants when it is cut or hacked or chopped or when it's hurt. So the tree which is hacked and chopped starts bleeding, but it is so resilient that it's not going to die with a simple act of hacking and chopping. Though it bleeds, soon it is going to heal itself. It's going to rejuvenate because of its power of resilience. The nature is so very resilient that the bleeding bark will soon heal, and from close to the ground will rise curled green twigs. That means new twigs start sprouting out from very close to the ground, the very place where it has been hacked and chopped. And these green twigs will grow as miniature boughs, branches, small branches will sprout out. And if unchecked will expand again to former size. So the poet here says, if we just leave the hacked and chopped pieces of the tree, the stunted piece of tree unchecked without further hurting it, then soon the tree is going to grow back to its former size. It's going to grow back to a fully grown tree as it had been before. So this is the resilience of nature. This is the resilience of the tree that is portrayed here by Gieve Patel. So we see in the first and the second stanza, Gieve Patel talks about the ways of trying to kill a tree. You could do it by jabbing the tree with a sharp knife, thrusting a sharp knife into the tree, or you can hack and chop the tree into pieces. But we see that the tree is so resilient that it's not going to die with the simple act of jabbing, hacking, or chopping it into pieces. So what are we to do? So in the third stanza, Gieve Patel begins with a negation. He says, no, these are not the ways. It's not going to work out. No, the root is to be pulled out. Okay? He comes to the realization that the simple jabbing and hacking and chopping is not going to kill the tree. If you want to kill the tree, you have to pull out the very source of the tree. The root is to be pulled out of the anchoring earth. Okay, so here the anchoring earth implies that the trees are secured firmly with the roots in the earth. Okay, so if we want to pull out the tree, the root has to be pulled out from the very anchor it has been held to. Okay, that is the earth. So it is to be roped, tied, and pulled out. So if you want to kill the tree, the root has to be pulled out, and before doing that, you have to rope it. Okay, you must have seen people when they want to bring down the tree. Okay, usually they tie rope around the tree so that it just doesn't fall off somewhere and cause casualty and damage. All right, so you have to rope it and tie it before you pull it out, snapped out or pulled out entirely. So it's not just pulling out of the anchor that's going to help. Okay, the root has to be pulled out and snapped out, means you have to put in a lot of force. It has to be exerted. A lot of exertion goes out there in order to pull out the tree. All right, or pulled out entirely. So the tree has to be pulled out. The root has to be pulled out entirely if you want to kill it. Because we already know that even if a bit of that root remains on the earth, it's going to grow back to its former size. So it has to be pulled out entirely, out from the earth cave. The earth cave refers to the pit which held the root of the tree for so many years. And it also refers to the womb of Mother Earth, which had secured and protected the root of the tree for so many years of its growth, and the strength of the tree exposed. Okay, so finally, when we are able to pull out the root entirely, then we can see that the true strength of the tree is exposed. It is brought to light. Okay, it is brought out for the first time, and we see it, that it is the root where the strength of the tree lies. The source, white and wet. So the white, wet root of the tree, which was lying hidden for years, is exposed, and we realize that this white, wet root is the source of the strength of the tree. The most sensitive, okay, the poet says this is the most sensitive part of the tree, hidden for years inside the earth. So this root, which is the most sensitive part of the tree, the very source of the strength of the tree, was lying hidden for years inside the earth. Okay, and it is for the first time the root is being exposed when it is finally killed. Okay, so it is only when you get to kill the tree, that is by uprooting the tree, you kill it totally, and this tree, which had been growing for years, had been hiding its true strength, that is the root inside the earth. So finally, man seems to have found out the way and means to kill the tree, and that is by uprooting the tree, okay, pulling out the root entirely, and then it is killed. But like a violent murderer, man somehow does not seem to be satisfied by simply killing the tree by uprooting it. So, in the final stanza, the poet goes on further. Then the matter of scorching and choking. Okay, so the tree which has been uprooted is left in the sun to scorch, to dry until it chokes in sun and air. Okay, so the sun and the air further goes on drying and choking the tree, browning, hardening. So the white wet root is browned. Okay, it starts hardening, twisting, withering. Okay, so if you leave the tree to dry in sun and air, after some time it starts changing its color, it becomes brown, it starts hardening. Okay, then it starts twisting its form, it starts bending, all right, and it starts withering. Okay, all the water in the tree is all sapped out and it starts to wither. And finally, okay, we see that the final line of the poetry, and then it is done, okay, expresses man's feeling of triumph that he has been able to kill the tree. Thus, we can conclude that Gieve Patel's On Killing a Tree is a lyric where the poet raises an angry voice against deforestation. It is a scathing attack upon the human action of reckless cutting down of trees. Man here has been portrayed as a murderer. With the use of violent imageries, he brings forth man's violent nature. Gieve Patel, in the poem, satirizes man's murderous intent and ironically drives home the fact that it is man who will be the greatest loser because of his own treacherous act. So, my dear students, I hope this video has helped you understand Gieve Patel's On Killing a Tree better. If you still have queries, please feel free to drop in your queries in the comment box below so that I may be able to resolve them for you. Thank you.